Okay, now we're going to study chapter 11 of The Giver. So Jonas is lying on the bed and he's taken his shirt off, and by touch, the man is giving him the memory of snow, and he relaxes, and then he starts shivering because he feels the cold, and he feels the chilled air, and this is like a complete shock. He's never felt this way before, and he doesn't feel the touch of the man's hands anymore. And then he feels these feather-like feelings that are peppering his body and face, which is snowflakes, and this is a very pleasant sensation. And he, in a way, like, part of him is aware that he's in the room, and a part of him is aware of being in this place where there's snow. So he's it's a very nice description. He could see a bright whirling torrent of crystals in the air around him, and he could see them gather on the backs of his hands like cold fur. This is his very first experience of snow, and he sees his own breath, just like it is on a very, very cold day, which we don't have much of. And then he realizes that he's sitting on this hard, flat object, and he knows that it's a sled. It's interesting because when he sees things, he has the word for them in his head as well. Okay, because he realizes he's sitting on a hill. Okay, but he doesn't know what a hill is, but his thoughts are telling it's a hill. And then he starts to feel himself go downhill. He's aware that he's going downhill on this sled, and he realizes he's on these runners, okay, that are helping him slide down. It's a really, this is a fun ride, and it's Jonas's first experience of two things: of going downhill, and of the snow, also of being in a sled. So it's actually three things. And then he opens his eyes, and he's back on the bed. He's back in the room, and the man asks him how he felt, and he says he felt surprised. And the man wipes his forehead, and he says, "Phew, it was exhausting, but it lightened me a little." Okay. And then Jonas asks him a question. He says, "Well, does that mean that you don't have the memory of the sled and the snow anymore?" And the man says, "That's right. He has taken the memory from the man," which is all very interesting. And Jonas says, "Well, you don't have that memory anymore. I took it from you." But the man says, "No, I have a whole world of them in my memory. This is not the only memory I have." And Jonas says, "Oh, does that mean we could do it again?" And the man says, "Maybe another day for a treat, but there's no time." He keeps saying there's no time. We don't know why, but he's got to show him other things. So now he tells Jonas to lie back down. So after Jonas had his fun experience on the sled, he's quite keen to do it. But before he starts, he asks this question like, "Well, hang on a minute. Why don't we have snow? Why don't we have sleds? Why don't we have hills?" And the man explains it. This is very important for us to learn. He says, climate control. Okay? Snow made growing food difficult, limited the agricultural periods, and unpredictable weather made transportation almost impossible at times. It wasn't a practical thing, so it became obsolete. Obsolete means it stopped existing, no longer in production. Like certain things are obsolete nowadays, so we don't use them anymore. Okay, when we went to sameness, okay, we haven't heard this before, but this is going to come up again. Okay, and then he explains that hills also made life very difficult. They made conveyance of goods unwieldy, meaning it was difficult for them to transport things like food and equipment from place to place with hills. As we know, hills are a pain. It's much easier to drive or to bike or anything when things are flat. And then he says again, sameness. Okay, so they got rid of hills, they got rid of bad weather with climate control. And Jonas says, well, I wish we had those things still. Every now and then it would be, it'd be nice. And the man agrees. And he says, but that choice is not ours. Okay. And Jonas says, well, hang on a minute. Since you have so much power, maybe you could he's trying to say, maybe you could convince people to change things here. And the man corrects him and says, I have honor. I don't have power. Okay? And honor and power are not the same things. That's a discussion we could have another time. So he tells him to lie down quietly. And he says he's going to give him something else. And he's not going to tell him what he is. Jonas has to figure it out for himself. So now it was much more quick that Jonas is able to go into this other state. And his hands don't become cold. Instead, they feel warm. And the warmth spreads on his shoulders, his neck, on the side of his face. And it feels all very, very nice. And he didn't move. There was no sled. His posture didn't change. He was somewhere outside. Okay, and then he perceives the word. He feels the word. He kind of sees it. Sunshine. Okay? That means that in his community, sunshine doesn't exist. Understand that, okay? And he says sunshine aloud and he opens his eyes. Good. You did get the word. The receiver says, that makes my job easier. Not so much explaining. And it came from the sky. That's right, the old man said. Just the way it used to. So we used to have sun before sameness. Okay? Before climate control, Jonas adds. Okay, so the man's very happy. He's very happy with the way Jonas is learning. And then Jonas has another question. He says, well, I heard that the memories are going to be painful. These ones didn't hurt. And Jonas says, well, I started giving you nice memories, pleasurable memories, because of what happened with the previous failure. I learned that you have to do it that way. But he says, don't worry, Jonas, it will be painful. Okay, and Jonas says, I'm brave, I really am. And so now he's going to show him something painful. So he has him lie down, and Jonas is aware of time passes, and then he starts to feel a pain. Okay, he feels a sharp pain in the crease of the inner arm at the elbow. And he's like, ow, what is that? And he doesn't know what it is. And then he kind of knows, but the pain stops him from realizing what the word is. And the man tells him it was sunburn, okay? We have the same idea that these things, hills, snow, sun, they're great sometimes, but they're not great all the time. Does that mean we have to get rid of them? That's a question, right? And then it's time for Jonas to go home, and she thanks him. And Jonas asks him one more question. He says, oh, well, I don't know your name. Especially like it's very confusing because the man's the receiver and now Jonas is the receiver. So the man says, call me the giver. Okay. And that's how we get the name of the book.